I was 72 the morning my daughter brought the brochure. It sat on the kitchen table like a blackmailer. Shiny paper, smiling faces, pastel hallways, promises in tiny font. She slid it toward me with the practiced tenderness of women who practice kindness until it looked like love. "We need to talk about your future," she said, as if she were arranging dentist appointment. I looked at the glossy photograph of dining room filled with people who looked suspiciously well rested. I tasted lemon from the dish soap on my fingers and felt old in a way I'd never been taught to feel. Flinching, surprised, as if someone had rearranged the furniture in my life without asking. "My future is right here," I said. She smiled. "This place has staff, activities, medical support. It's safer. You wouldn't want to be burdened." The burden? The word landed like an insult from neighbor overhedge, polite, loud, and meant to be heard. "I'm fine," I said. I turned the page of the newspaper I was pretending to read. Fine is a useful word. It keeps people from asking questions they don't care to answer. "Mom," she said, quieter now, the voice she used when she wanted you to feel like the idiot in film. "You forget things. You've fallen twice in the last year. The note about that booster, or whatever," I said, cutting her off. I keep tally in my head. 2 falls, missed phone call, 2 friend because of closed eyelid, yes, none of which were death sentences. But she wasn't talking about safety. She was talking about paper. Numbers that could be moved from one column to another with an accountant's flourish. Her name is Claire. She is 47, sharp-suited and a mother-of-pearl kind of way, and married to a man who teaches statistics and calls himself practical the way people call themselves generous. They live in the kind of house that makes other houses look aspirational, and Claire is the kind of daughter who believes problems are solved by moving them somewhere else. "I'm not moving," I said. There was no point in watching her lie. She had never been graceful at it. She was to have practiced regret. She leaned forward. "I talked to the case manager. We can do gradual transition. You'll have help with bills, with the lawn, with meals, and you'll meet other people. It's social. Oh, so I should leave the home I paid for with my hands? The garden I planted after your father died? The room with the sun at 9 in the morning where I read novels and cry sometimes and call it therapy? Because I need to be social." I tasted amusement on the last word, as if we were in bad sitcom. Claire's practiced patience thin. "This is about your well-being, Mom." She used that phrase like weapon. Benevolence wrapped in moral superiority. People with enough money practice moral superiority like hobby. "I think my well-being prefers my own kitchen," I said. "Also, I make mean stew on Thursdays. People come." She blinked. "Neighbors." "Neighbors," I confirmed. "And people with actual taste." Claire closed the brochure, faking sighed as if she'd suffered for the good of the family. "That's not just me." I spoke to Mark. "The house is..." "He thinks it's time to consider options." Mark, my son-in-law, the man who taught high schoolers to love probability and told me once that life is a long sequence of expected values. He uses practical words, the way people use lard when they cook, to make everything smoother, less sticky. "So my future is spreadsheet now," I said. "Lovely." She tried to laugh. It came out then. "You're hurting my feelings, Mom." That's what made me laugh for real. Should have told me sooner. I could have bought tissues in bulk. She didn't find it funny. Later, after she left, I fed the cat and watered the geraniums and sat in the sunlight that had always felt like private consolation. My neighbors waved from across the fence. Mrs. Alvarez asked me about the tomatoes. I told her the secret was patience and too much talking to the plants. She laughed and said that made sense. At night I lay awake and counted not regrets. No, that's an indulgence for people with time. But odds are practical things. If someone assumes you are weak, they will test you. If they test you and find chin, they will pry. If they pry and there is treasure, they will take. Claire's phone buzzed, and I imagined the spreadsheet with my name on it. Assets, mother, potential, the margins where she drew lines around my life to justify relocation. I could have called my mother, could have called my oldest friend, could have done the proper thing, fight with petitions and lawyers and the slow violence of courts. But what always surprises people is that older women, the kind the world thinks should be sentimental or docile, collect things. We collect small favors given in the dark of nights people prefer not to remember. We keep receipts. We remember names. We never forget the men who promised and never paid. We bury debts like seeds. I dialed an old number. It rang like an old song. When the voice answered, there was a pause and then a laugh that sounded like it had once scared a man out of a bar. "So you finally called," he said. "His name is Frank Daly. He used to run engines for a living and now runs errands for people who need certain truths spoken aloud. He has crooked grin, fondness for cold beer, and personal dislike for bullies. He has also been sworn to secrecy. Times than admission fees to confessional. Do you know why I'm calling?" Why I said. "Is it about the brochure or about the neighbors stealing your tomatoes?" He said. He always mixed wit into concern. "It makes the medicine easier to swallow." "Both," I said. "Mostly the brochure." He chuckled. Do you want me to be the guy who rearranges the brochure into bonfire? Figuratively, Weiss said, but I will accept literal. Frank showed up within an hour. He wore a navy jacket with his name stitched on the chest like joke, and he slid into my kitchen chair as if he had judge-proofed his knees. You sure you want to do this? He asked. I regarded him. I'm not asking permission. I'm asking for whispers. He whistled softly. That's my favorite kind of work. We crafted a plan that was mostly about telling the truth loud enough for other truths to startle awake. Step 1. Wrecker. Claire's tendency to speak like philanthropist with tax benefits works against her. People who believe themselves moral make confessions to others, to their spouses, to financial advisors, to friends. Step 2. Witnesses. A quiet phone called Isis Alvarez, to the mail carrier, to the woman at the hair salon, people who noticed the brochure, people who noticed Claire visiting twice, a week to check-in, leaving with satisfied gestures and lighter wallet. Step 3. Leverage. It's dirty word for people who prefer roses to revolutions. Leverage is how things return to balance. Frank handled steps 1 and 2 with harmlessness that disarmed my son-in-law. He baked sympathy into his questions and called me Laurie like we were kids again, which we were. 2 people who'd been alive too long to be shocked at petty evil. Within a week, Claire sounded like woman rehearsing lines for an uncertain play, calling various professionals, making notes, promising Grandma smooth transition. She left every visit with paper bag of samples, laundry detergents, pamphlet for social activities, coupons, little things that are supposed to make transitions feel like gifts. We let her parade those bags. We did not let her know we saw. Our job, in practice, was to make her reveal herself, and she did it 2 weeks after the brochure. Claire came early. Too early, with pink swatches and solemn expression. She found me at the stove, humming to an episode of an old radio drama because the kettle knows the truth about patience. Mom, she said, the ridiculous rehearsed tenderness again. We're going to start the paperwork next week. Oh, paperwork. I turned the spoon, making promises to the surface. I destroyed mine years ago. They were boring. She smiled. Not that paperwork. Legal. Guardianship filings. It's for protection. I set the spoon down very carefully. Protection, I echoed. From whom? From accidents. From Paris? From forgetting. She knelt as if she wanted to fix something. You won't have to worry about anything. Oh, well, I get to keep my stew schedule. She hesitated. We can arrange visits. The word tasted like varnish. Listen, I said, softer now, because I wanted to be kind and not let my daughter watch me rage like servant who's lost everything. If this is about safety, set up more lights. Get new handrail in the hallway. Hire cleaning person if you must. Ask Mark to help with the yard. But don't sign my name away because you decided I am risk. She looked at me with brief flare of something like anger and then something like calculation. Mom, she said, you don't understand the legalities. Oh, I understand gardens, I replied. Tomatoes are not legal concept, but they do improve the quality of life. She blinked. You're being difficult. Oh, excellent, I said. I practiced. Her jaw tightened and she rose. We'll start next week. But when she left, there was that small sound like door that believes it is final argument. It is always amazing how the sound of someone leaving can hold verdict. That night, I prepared dinner for 2 and set one plate on the table where Claire used to sit as child and put folded piece of paper beside it. The paper had single line. You can try, but you should know the neighbors how you saved their son's wand from the dump truck last summer. They also remember that you said the word protection in tone used for debts. I signed it with an old joke name our neighbor used when she wanted to be anonymous. Assist Peters from Threep, and left the envelope by her gate. It was small and theatrical, but theater is a good teacher. The next morning, Claire called. Who had left a note? Someone who knows you, I said. Someone who knows that you are excellent at looking compassionate on camera. Her voice changed. There was the faint edge of panic that looks like pebbles in shoes. Annoying, but not yet crisis. You can't do this, she said. You shouldn't be. Did you say should like it slow? I replied. If it isn't, it's your opinion. She hung up, angry, and then neat. In all families, we rehearse the same tiny tragedies. Words that become seizures of apologies offered as bribes. Claire's arsenal was steady money and belief that you can purchase the stories you want other people to tell about you. If I were young, I would have stormed to the courthouse. But stamina is subtler currency than rage. I had less of the first but enough of the second to be patient and precise. We started to collect evidence. Frank's idea was charming in its simplicity. People remember more than we give them credit for. Neighbor who sees social worker at my gate will remember. Mail carrier who notices unfamiliar envelopes will remember. We documented the visits, recorded conversations where Claire used phrases like, we need to be practical, and I'm doing this for us. That mean I want the money in softer dialect. Then we arranged small meeting at the community center. Seminar on elder safety, public thing, advertised on flyer made to look official with tea and muffins, friendly reminder of civic duty. A woman from the city's elder services would speak. There would be lawyer giving neutral advice, the kind of event that makes people feel safe and also makes people speak. Claire could have chosen not to attend. She chose to come and wore a dress that said participation trophy. She brought with her brochure in case anyone needed persuasion. She sat at the front and smiled like woman who knows the audience is hers. The lawyer, an earnest man with thinning hairline and fond for neckties, spoke about guardianship, about the paperwork necessary when loved one becomes unable to manage finances. He used phrases like the last resort and best interest, and people in the room nodded as if agreeing to weather report. Then there was the Kanda. An elderly man at the back raised his hand. What safeguards are there to prevent family members from abusing guardianship? The room leaned forward. The lawyer coughed, adjusting his tie. Courts require evidence, medical reports. They require oversight. Woman in the second row raised her hand, voice steady as metronome. And what about conflicts of interest? If child stands to inherit, does the court consider that? Silence like hell breath. Claire smiled then. She shifted in her chair as if her seat had become suspicious. The lawyer, anxious, gave the textbook answer. But the seed was planted. At the end of the meeting, people came up to Claire with congratulations about her civic engagement. Or they came up to ask quietly if there was anyone who could help with phone numbers for legal aid. People remember the details of the drama that does not immediately involve them, but they keep details for day when it might. By then, I had the documentation, the dates she visited, the bag she carried, the final line. Her husband's signature on an email suggesting financial restructuring. It looked tidy on page. It looked awful in context. We were not rude. Villainy resents theatrical exposure. It prefers to work in shadows. So we exposed it to light. We made the undercurrent visible. We let people ask questions, and questions are slow, persistent creatures. Called a week later, she was quieter than before. Mom, she said, maybe we can discuss options. Not now, but soon, for safety. I folded my hands and thought about the stew simmering downstairs, how the house smelled, how the geraniums were still stubborn. There are things older women keep like heirlooms. Recipes, patience, method of living that poisons the assumptions of youth. Guess why I said I will discuss. Over stew. Bring your paperwork, bring your moral certainties. We will lay everything out on the table like nice Sunday lunch. There was pause like window closing on sudden storm. Well, all right, she said finally. Sunday came with blue skies. I set 2 plates and third for good measure, the third for the neighbor who smelled like rosemary and gossip. I served stew, and the spoon scraped the surface like metronome. My daughter arrived with her hair perfect in her walk practice. Mark came in second, shaking hands, offering help with chairs. They sat. We ate. I asked banal questions about their job, about the kids' exams, about tile colors at their house. They answered as if we were on show where people put on performances. After the plates were clear and coffee served, I brought out small folder. They contained copies of the notes, my neighbor's observations, printout of an email time-stamped and signed by Mark that had suggested consolidation for simplicity. Claire reached for the folder and her hand trembled. It's misunderstanding, was she said. It's paperwork. We can what? Well, I asked. Make my life checkbox. Put me in place to be safe and then forget my tomatoes. Change the memory of your father who planted those tomatoes with me. Her face crumpled. Mom, oh no, I said softly. You'll answer. You'll tell me why you thought you had the right, why you believed my life was something to relocate for your convenience. She looked at Mark. He wanted to say something, but his mouth found only the taste of numbers. The soft arrogance he calls practicality. Claire swallowed. She told me then. Not in tidy confession, but in rush. About late bills, about loan Mark had taken for bit. Partnership that cratered, about lawyer who had suggested guardianship as way to stabilize assets. She said we lot like course practicing their part. At first I thought it was the sensible thing, she said, for both of us. For everyone, I told myself. If you told yourself that if you moved me, you could control the money and handle the house responsibly, I finished for her because the sentence was simple arithmetic of entitlement. She nodded. I kept my receipts, I said. The ones you thought were charming relics. I kept every note, every favor, and I counted too. She looked like she might cry. Mark rubbed his forehead. What do you want, Mom? Claire asked finally, that old echo of negotiation. I smiled, the kind of smile that's not mercy but promise. But I want honesty and I want them on paper. I want you to admit to whoever you told you we're doing what's best, and I want plan that keeps me at home with dignity, and I want you to pay for the gardener you took to look at my lawn last week, because if my tomatoes died from neglect, you'll owe more than money. Claire laughed once, loud enough to startle, because in the end it's humiliating and hilarious when playing you thought clever collapses under the weight of ordinary decency. You're joking. I wasn't, She left that afternoon with less certainty than she arrived. She had come to move me like files. She left with the knowledge that files sometimes have people on the other side who remember names and dates and conversations that were supposed to be private. Days later, There was meeting at the bank. Claire was called in by her father for a clarifying discussion with the bank's compliance officer. Woman with face like folded paper in love for forms asked Morgan from post office about the unusual mailings. Mrs. Alvarez confirmed the brochure deliveries, and neighbors spoke up about the frequent visits. The word conflict of interest was used, and Claire flushed as if someone had turned up the heat. It is funny. Tragic is a better word. How the architecture of Greek collapses if you shove public attention at the right beings. People who profit quietly are allergic to witnesses. They crumble when asked to explain their virtue to strangers who have no money invested in the light. Claire called me from the car, voice then. Mom, they were just asking questions. It will be fine. It will be fine. If fine means you keep your hands off my keys, Vi said. And if fine means you stop assuming you can move people like furniture, she sighed. You're so dramatic. Am I? I answered. Or am I just older and suspicious of people who bring brochures? She didn't respond. The truth is, revenge is rarely crescendo. It is a series of small, exacting corrections. You make margin visible and then claim it. You invite witnesses and watch their faces when they understand what was hidden. You do not shout. You show. You do not burn. You illuminate. Claire learned lesson. Ambition dressed in concern is still ambition. She learned that the neighborhood remembers who waters the plants and who brings brochures. She learned perhaps late that you cannot make life for someone else without asking them. Weeks later, the case manager called to apologize in a voice that sounded like man reading text. The bank retracted their advice. Mark confessed that a lawyer's memo had recommended guardianship as an option and that he had never meant to harm anyone. Claire made Facebook posts about elder safety, about learning and understanding, and about being better daughter. Performative grief with practical spin. I read them with cup of tea and book of poems I'd annotated when I first fell in love. Sometimes the quiet recovery is better than any traumatic ruin. My tomatoes were thriving under Mrs. Alvarez's watchful eye. Frank brought me six-pack and new recipe for stew. I laughed more because the world gives you absurdity when you can least afford to take it seriously. But I did not forgive easily. Forgiveness is overrated in some circles. It's pretty linen many people wear when they want to feel superior after they've been hurt. I prefer honesty dressed as boundaries. Claire comes over on Sundays now. She helps with the laundry and brings cake that tastes like store-bought. We speak. I watch her hands when they fidget with the hem of her cardigan and think how easy it would be to tell the full story at the bank, to call every person who had been kind enough to listen. I could ruin her if I wanted. I know. Not because I am generous. Because I am tired. And because I like tomatoes. But the next time someone slides brochure across my table, I will fold it like paper and light it and watch it go. And I will say something loud enough for the neighborhood to hear. Not today.